In 1936, as Germany was preparing for World War II, they began development of a new rocket system, the Virgil-Tungswaffen 2, or Vengeance Weapon 2, more commonly abbreviated to V-2. This was designed to reach across the British Channel in order to hit targets like London and Birmingham. Now, there is actually a pre-V-2 model of this rocket called the V-1 flying missile. This actually began development a year before the V-2 did, and was deployed more than a month before the V-2 as well, on August 30th, 1942. Whereas the V-2 rocket launched on October 3rd of that year. Along with the V-1 rocket, the V-2 rocket was developed by lead engineer Wernher von Braun. From its inception, it was designed to be a long-range ballistic weapon that would launch, fly for a distance, before landing at its target with an explosive warhead. It's time to discuss the real question of the V-2. How did its development affect the course of the Second World War? Standing at 15 meters tall, and weighing in at 13.2 tons, the V-2 was a very practical weapon, as it weighed far less than many planes and trains at the time, and was very easily transported on a mobile launcher platform that could be stationed at anywhere that had level ground. The V-2 also featured a warhead that weighed about 9,000 pounds, and was packed with high conventional explosives. The missile had a vertical range of about 80 kilometers and a horizontal range of about 320 kilometers. However, this could vary depending on the weight of the payload and the amount of fuel packed into the missile. The V-2 was able to be produced incredibly quickly, at a rate of about 900 a month at its peak in 1943, at the production factories of Peenemünde, Zeppelinwerk, and Mittelwerk. The high production streak ended on August 17th of 1943 when Peenemünde was catastrophically bombed by Allied forces, permanently crippling the production site. In the years following the production of the V-2 and the end of World War II, it came out that slave labour had been used to produce the rockets at such a high rate, and that lead engineer Wernher von Braun had at least been complicit, the brutal punishment that slaves would undergo if they underproduced on the production lines. As the V-2 was deployed en masse in 1944, as the Germans were beginning to lose control of the war to the Allies, they began attacking London and Paris en masse with the V-2 rocket, attempting to cripple the city's medical facilities in order to stop troops from being recovered and sent to the battlefields where they were rapidly being overtaken by Allied forces. It is believed that around 9,000 Allied forces and civilians were killed by the V-2 rocket. In the missile's deadliest attack, it killed 567 people in Cinema Rex after being launched from a military base in the Netherlands. However, this pales in comparison compared to the amount of its labourers and construction workers that died. It is believed that over 12,000 slave labourers died during the construction of the rocket, after being reprimanded for underperforming, sabotage or treachery. The V-2 was one of Nazi Germany's most advanced military projects, costing about $2 billion from start to finish, with one V-2 costing around $17,000 nominal dollars per launch. However, despite thousands of units being built and $2 billion being sunk into the project, this didn't help the fact that the V-2 was overall very inaccurate and rarely hit its target dead on. So to directly address the question at the beginning of the documentary, no, the V-2 did very little to affect the course of the Second World War, as it killed more in its construction than its actual deployment and cost Nazi Germany $2 billion that could have been spent on new naval ships and airborne craft. In April of 1945, as Berlin fell and Nazi Germany collapsed, America and the Soviet Union began extracting rocket scientists to take home to begin their own ballistic missile programs. One of these scientists was Wernher von Braun, the lead designer of the V-2. While originally going back to America to begin work on America's ballistic missile program, he later joined NASA in 1958 to begin work on human exploration of outer space, and in doing so invented two of the most iconic rockets of all time, the Redstone, which carried the first 7 Mercury astronauts into space, and the Saturn V, which sent Americans to the moon in the late 60s and early 70s. While our first venture into rocketry was very rushed and militarized, it paved the way for some of our species' greatest achievements, And the rudimentary techniques and principles discovered during the development of the V-2 rocket still echo through rocket design today, even if we still don't get it right 100% of the time.